If you had to take the Missouri driver's test over again, how would you do? There are many whose anxiety levels would rise precipitously when faced with the prospect of this daunting task. Many have said that taking the driver's test is singularly the most stressful thing they have ever done. Many people recall clearly the day they took the test. I remember the day I took my test 32 years ago. And I can still tell you exactly what I did wrong, and I can tell you exactly what my score was. Not that it's any of your business. Tomorrow, Alexander and Shelby are going to take their written portion of the test in an effort to get their learner's permit. And in order to do so, they have studied this booklet called the Missouri Department of Revenue Driver's Guide. It's a 120-page book filled with rules and regulations outlining all the codes of proper conduct for driving. It contains such gems as, if you are driving a bus or a truck, you must not follow another bus or a truck any closer than 300 feet. However, you may follow closer than 300 feet when you are in a business or residential district or when passing. And Missouri law does not require emergency equipment for vehicles licensed for 42,000 pounds or less with an F plate, solid waste haulers licensed for 60,000 pounds or less, and commercial vehicles licensed for 12,000 pounds or less. You guys got that? A particular note in the Department of Revenue Driver's Guide is Chapter 11. This is the chapter about the point system and how it affects you. These pages detail the consequences that are imposed upon people for violating the rules of the road. If a driver accumulates 8 points in 18 months, unless they have a good lawyer, they will have their driver's license suspended for 30 days. 12 points in 12 months results in driver's license suspension. Oh, there are many rules and regulations associated with proper vehicular navigation, and justly so. These rules are designed to keep traffic flowing smoothly and to keep passengers safe on the road. But of course, driving is not the only place where we have rules and regulations in society. As a church that manages a cemetery, we are obliged to obey the cemetery laws of the state of Missouri. These laws are several, I think it's about 50, 60 pages of small type that details how cemeteries in the state of Missouri will operate and what guidelines will follow. Again, these are good regulations as they protect both the consumer above and below ground. But understanding the rules and regulations can be a bit of a burden. Now, if anybody has questions about rules in the state of Missouri and the legal context that we're currently living in, all you have to do is consult the Blue Book. The Blue Book is published annually by the state of Missouri and contains 1,450 pages, fine print of course, of the newest regulations, situations, and opportunities facing our state. We have become quite a legalistic society. A strict interpretation of the law is part of our DNA, part of who we are as a people, and perhaps part of that identity dates back to the legal codes of the Jewish people and certainly the Ten Commandments, which are very much a part of our identity as a culture. But sometimes I think that we misunderstand the Ten Commandments when we liken them to the rules of the road or the Missouri Blue Book. When we reduce the Ten Commandments to legalistic language and a system of rules and consequences, a point system, if you will, we miss the true understanding of what the Ten Commandments are. This misunderstanding has been a practice of the church for centuries. The church has taken all of God's commandments, as well as Jesus' commandments and teachings, and reduced them at times to legalistic moralism. God's children must behave a certain way or risk divine retribution, even condemnation to hell, as doled out by human intercessors. That is, if you don't believe according to human interpretations of God's will, human beings will criticize and condemn you, all in the name of God. One of the most recognizable interpretations of this idea is somewhat lampooned in the novel by Nathaniel Hawthorne, The Scarlet Letter. In this novel, a woman named Hester Prynne is ostracized by church and society for having a child out of wedlock. Her husband was presumably lost at sea, and during that time, she had a daughter, Pearl. While she is being judged and condemned by her Puritan New England town, her long-lost husband returns. He takes up a new identity and vows to find his estranged wife's lover. The whole book revolves around the seventh commandment against adultery. However, the main focus of the book is not about the broken relationships that resulted from that. It is about the punishment levied by human intercessors. There's also a revealed hypocrisy on the part of the church when the true father of the child is revealed. In all, this book is an illustration of the human misunderstanding of the true identity of the Ten Commandments as vehicles to bring people closer together and closer to God, not weapons to separate people from one another. So today, we're addressing a question that was asked by one of you back in May. All summer, my sermons are addressing questions that you asked on those little green sheets I had in the bulletins back in May. Questions you have posed. And today's question revolves around God's commandments. The person who wrote this question rightly understood that God actually gave us 613 commandments, not just 10. And in structuring her question, she alluded to those 613 commandments. She asked, are some of God's commandments more important than others? And if Jesus came to forgive us, are we still obligated to follow God's commandments, as we see in the Old Testament? This is a great question. And I could really preach 2 sermons on this, or one really long one, about the nature of God's commandments themselves. One about the nature of God's commandments themselves, and the second one on dispensationalism, the idea that Jesus' life and essence negated the wisdom of the Old Testament. But I'll address both parts in one sermon that won't be too long for you. The first part I want to address is the nature of the commandments in general. It is true that there are 613, or some people will say 633, depending on how you break them down, commandments in the Old Testament. And shortly after God gives us these top 10 commandments in Exodus 20, verses 1 through 21, God gives us more. God gives us commandments about how our altars would be built of earth and stone. Commandments about how to treat our slaves. Commandments about violence. Here's a hint, God's against it. And then God gives us laws about property ownership, restitution, lending money, and commands us to be generous and hospitable to immigrants in our land. There are even more commandments in the next book, Leviticus, and many of these are repeated again in Deuteronomy, the book whose name literally means the second telling. So which of God's commands are more important? Which are more important than others? Are some elevated? Certainly, church traditions have elevated the top 10. The first 10 commandments, the ones that we heard today read from chapter 20 of Exodus. And actually, these 10, really, it's appropriate to elevate them because these 10 commandments contain the essence of the following 600 or so plus commandments. But are they more important than others? I don't see these commandments as a checklist, an itemized statement of cost and consequences. They are not rules for the road or the blue book for God. And anyone that tells you that God is simply about instruction and retribution is missing the point of these 10 commandments entirely. These commandments are about relationship, a relationship with God and a relationship with each other, about getting closer to one another and in that way getting closer to God as well. These commandments are not a standalone litmus test of faith, even though many in the church have portrayed them as such for years. They are a body of relationship, a means to grow ever closer to God. I think there is a difference between a command and an order. Now, some of the veterans in the congregation may disagree with me because often folks in the military conflate the two. But for today's purposes, let's try to distinguish a difference between a command and an order. An order is given to an individual. A person is given orders for a mission. A person is given their marching orders when they're dismissed from a job or from a relationship. A person has orders to follow to accomplish a certain task. But commands, when we use the word properly, are used to distinguish and guide a group. Soldiers march on the command field, a place for a group to gather together. A person who pulls a group together and guides them is called a commander. A leader issues orders to one person but commands to a group. Commands are designed to bring guidance to a group, one body, to accomplish a specific task, as outlined by the commander. Even when somebody must commandeer something, it's to be used for the common good. Commands are not just about ordering people around. Commands are about bringing a group together into some sort of unity to accomplish a task. And I think that is how to look at God's commands as well. Not orders, but commands. They are given to a group of people, the Israelites and us as well, to unite us, to unite them for a common purpose, and to identify us as God's children. They're not meant to be individual isolators or tools to turn people against each other. They're designed to bring people together, united as God's children. This past week, we witnessed a tragedy, the likes of which has not been seen before in our country. In a massacre bloodier than Columbine or Sandy Hook or any of the other atrocities that one human being has committed against other human beings, a gunman entered an Orlando nightclub and killed 49 people, wounding 53 others. This is the antithesis to today's passage from Exodus, to God's intentions for humanity as seen in the commandments that God has given us. God's commands are designed to bring us together. God's commands are about love, about acceptance, about humility. Religious differences aside, the understanding of God's covenant with us, as illustrated in these commandments, are to bring us all together and live together in unity. This tragic violation is about more than just violating command number 6. This is about violating all that commands us to be. And like that Orlando shooter, when we base our lives on hatred and violence and harming one another, we're not just breaking a numbered commandment. We're violating all that God commands us to be as people. An interesting point to note when talking about the Ten Commandments is that they are structured differently by different faith traditions. If you take a close look at Exodus chapter 20, verses 1 through 21 that Shelby read a bit ago, you would see that there are really 13 different things listed here, 13 different commandments, if you will. In order to make them 10, different denominations combine either the first 3 or the last 3. So because of this, the Catholic Church, the Missouri Synod Lutheran Church, and most other mainline Protestant churches numbered the commandments differently. In the Missouri Synod Lutheran Church, you shall not commit adultery is number 6. To us, it's number 7. In the Catholic Church, remember the Sabbath day and keep it holy is number 3. To us, it's number 4. That human factor and disputed interpretation does not detract us from the meaning of the Ten Commandments, unless we get caught up by interpreting them as an itemized list. By embracing them as a body of relationship, we forego all the doctrinal disputes about numbering them and see the essence of who God truly is. These commandments, these 613 and certainly the top 10, are meant to bring us together. And this was Jesus' goal as well. 1,300 years after Moses received these commandments on Mount Sinai, God saw that God's people were still not joined together. And so God came to us. God came to us, lived among us, and shared our common lot. God became one of us so that God may more fully understand us and that we may more fully understand God. God's essence in Jesus Christ was the ideal of the Ten Commandments fulfilled. Jesus is the Ten Commandments embodied in the world, God's most fervent desire that we come together as God's people and live together. Jesus' life, Jesus' ministry, Jesus' commandments do not negate the Ten Commandments or the 613 commandments or the laws of Leviticus. Jesus' life is simply one more way to do what God has always been trying to do: bring God's people together. We shall be united as God's people. We shall serve no other God, money, power, prestige, or fame. We shall not put our faith in graven images, but in the mysterious essence of God. We shall not abuse our fellow earth creatures in the name of God. We shall remember to take time out of our busy schedules to get closer to God. We shall honor and faithfully remember our parents, our history, and our heritage. We shall not murder one another. We shall not turn each other into sex objects, committing adultery without love. We shall not steal from one another or from God. We shall not lie about each other or about our own shortcomings. We shall not covet another person's house. We shall not covet another person's spouse. We shall not covet another person's property, status, or place in society. This is the covenant that we share with God. God spoke it to us, and as God's people, this is the agreement that we have come to understand. We do not obey these rules. We follow these commands. For in doing so, we become united as God's children, closer to each other and closer to God. And by doing so, all will know that we belong to God. Amen.